excited to welcome you to this session. My name is Petra Nachmias and I'm one of the support team from ESCAP together with Wanapon. We'll be supporting you through this session. I will shortly hand over to our chair, Mr. Gorgita of Georgia, who will moderate and chair the session. But before we start, just a few housekeeping items. First of all, as you know, we're using this platform, Microsoft Teams. For those of you who aren't familiar with this platform, when you move your mouse, you get a little black bar coming up, and that's your control bar. And here, this is where you can mute yourself or unmute. And this is also where you can open up the chat screen, where you'll be able to communicate with the rest of the participants and the organizers. So if you do have any issues, please write it into the chat screen. And the chat screen is also what we're going to be using for the Q&A session as well. So we'd invite you to write your questions for the panelists into the chat screen. We would ask you, as always, to please mute yourselves when you're not speaking. And because of the interference, sometimes when people forget to mute, if there is someone who has not muted and there's background noise, we will be muting people to allow the proceedings to continue smoothly. So if you do find yourself muted and you want to speak, then you are able to also then unmute yourself. The session is going to be 90 minutes long, and it's going to be consisting of 2 parts. We're going to start off with a set of 3 papers, followed by a question and answer session, a quick 1-minute break as we shift around, and then we go to the next group of 3 papers, followed by another 15-minute question and answer, and then a quick wrap up. So without further ado, then I will hand over to our chair, Mr. Peter, to begin the proceedings.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gogita Todradze. I'm Executive Director of the National Statistics Office of Georgia. It is my great pleasure to greet you on behalf of my institution. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the ESCAP for organizing this meeting with an aim to discuss the issues of the modernization of official statistics. This session will cover issues related to the efficient use of standardized models for modernization of statistical production and services. As you are aware, modernizing statistical business processes is an important issue for all national statistical offices. The standardization of the statistical production process and the improvement of processes are also important targets, and some consideration should be given to adopting a more functional and flexible model based on the GSBPM principles. Actually, defining and mapping business processes in NSOs started more than 10, even 12 years ago. Many terms were used from the beginning. For instance, statistical value chain, statistical process chain, business process model, and so on and so forth. But now it's called as generic statistical business process model. In this session, we hear from authors from how they have responded to the modernization challenge by utilizing innovative data sources for tourist satellite accounts, mapping of existing business processes and workflows using GSBPM, having an online questionnaires for household and business surveys and creating an area sampling frame to improve the accuracy of crop statistics, implementing GSBPM based vital statistical system and using social media as well. So as already was mentioned, we have 6 speakers in this session with duration of 90 minutes. Now I would like to invite first presenter, Mr. Omurbek Ibrahim from the National Statistical Committee of Kyrgyzstan. Mr. Ibrahim, the floor is yours. You have 8 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, let me share our experience on the way we implemented our project on using GSBPM as a framework for making an overview of the statistical system of Kyrgyzstan. So the project actually started several years ago under the support of Statistics Norway. Statistics Norway is a long partner of the National Statistical Committee, and we've been cooperating for almost 10 years on various subject matter areas. So the decision was made to help to introduce staff members of the National Statistical Committee to quality assurance matters and capacity building and quality assurance. And it was also decided to use the GSBPM as a model for mapping and documenting the production processes. So it was clear that the National Statistical Committee inherited a lot from the old Soviet system, and of course the system needs to be changed. But before making any changes, before starting new projects, so it was decided to find out where you are, what you are dealing with, and it was decided to use GSBPM as a framework to map and document the production processes, existing production processes. Another problem was that many things, the way the statistics was produced, many information, knowledges and experiences were kept in the heads of the staff members, especially in the heads of the older generation of statisticians. And things never been documented in the National Statistical Committee. So it was a unique opportunity to make an overview, to document the existing production processes based on an internationally accepted and agreed standard or model, GSBPM. So it was the NSC has the National Statistical Committee has set up a project group on quality assurance, and the special focus was made on GSBPM. So we decided to involve people from different levels. The central office, the main computing center, the regional offices. So the problem was that the people working in the central office often didn't have a full understanding how the things are done at the main computing center and the regional offices. And the same was true for the people working in the regional offices, how things are done in the central office and the main computing center. So there was a serious problem of miscommunication, weak communication among staff members, and the lack of the common vision how statistics is produced in Kyrgyzstan. So it was decided to use this so-called Norwegian way of mapping statistical production processes. So we split people in several groups, and each group would be represented by people from the regional offices, the main computing center, and the central office, and they would together start mapping the processes using these different color cards. For example, the blue color card was here how the things are done in different processes and sub-processes, while the red cards, for example, were problems and weaknesses in each level. So these sessions were organized in a brainstorming brainstorming sessions. And the main goal was to getting to know who is doing what and why at each level of the National Statistical Committee. And it was also decided that the institution, it was also decided that the people involved into the project also decide on the witnesses, institutional witnesses at each level of production of statistics. And they were also tasked to come up with common solutions together to address those witnesses. So in the next slide, I would like to highlight some of the specific outcomes of the project. So first of all, the project provided a technique to describe and document the production processes, and the production processes were described in a structured way. And staff members coming from different levels of the National Statistical System after the project understood the overall processes that take place in different levels of data production. We also managed to improve communication and understanding between different staff members that come from different levels of the NSC system. And everyone became better aware of the end product at each level. And of course, the staff members also gradually started to understand what is quality assurance, what is GSBPM, and the importance of quality assurance in the institution. And finally, it was a great brainstorming exercise for everyone. So I would like to hear in the next slide speak about the institutional weaknesses and the solutions. And the good thing about this slide is this approach is that the management of the statistical committee decided to ask the staff members themselves to do the assessment and specify the institutional weaknesses themselves, and most importantly, come up with common solutions. And it has also a psychological aspect. I mean, if you let your staff identify and specify the weaknesses and come up with the solutions how to address the weaknesses, it would have a very positive effect. So, and we decided not to avoid the situation when, for instance, the consultants come and tell you, show you the weaknesses and propose solutions.
I'm sorry, one minute to go.
Okay, so the key, so I'm not going to read all the weaknesses and the solutions that we identified, so you can see on the screen. And the way forward, for us is to move towards modernizing and streamlining the existing production processes and to define the so-called future production system. The next one is to ensure continuous quality in statistical production and try to help the institution to build a quality conscious culture. And most importantly, make changes in the production process, but don't forget to change the mindset of the people as well. So the next picture illustrates in the best way.
I'm sorry, the time is up, I'm sorry.
So, yes, it was my final slide. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim, for very interesting presentation. Now I would like to invite Mr. Said Mohammed Hussein from the National Organization for Civil Registration of Iran. Mr. Said, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Okay. In the name of God, I hope everybody be healthy and safe. I'm going to provide a vision of some efforts by Islamic Republic of Iran with the statistics system in the way of modernization from the viewpoint of the GSBPM. First, let's review the main topics I go through. I will briefly introduce the role of the IRI CRBSID system in the National Statistical System. Then I will review major actions performed by the BDMS, which is the responsible theory for the statistics about vital events. And finally, I shortly describe two unique experiences we had in the way of modernization. National Organization for Civil Registration, known as NOCR, is one of the key components of the NSS in Iran. It is the civil registrar responsible for national population database and is responsible for statistics about vital events, which is up to BDMS, and the only PIN provider for individuals and has the population register in progress. Bureau of Demographic and Migration Statistics, BDMS, is the statistical hand in NOCR and also is the focal point for the CRBS decade in Asia Pacific in Iran. This bureau managed to implement GSBPM as much as possible to the system of vital statistics since 2016. From the GSBPM point of view, the major relevant actions performed are first setting priorities for the overarching processes, specifically legal framework management and strategic planning, both at the high-level administrations. This leads to the transparent declaration of the Supreme Council of Statistics that determined the organization as the official population registrar. Second was specifying needs for the users and stakeholders. BDMS collected all types of current requests for statistics and products to make it clear about what we have and what we should have. Different types of users with various needs showed sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Yes.
Okay. BDMS collected all types of current requests for statistics and products to make it clear about what we have and what we should have. Different types of users with various needs showed that this spectrum of needs should be revised, and the public need for being more aware about the statistics and be more familiar with official statistics concepts are considered as the first need that must be met. And as a third step, BDMS had to satisfy the needs and manage feedback from the newly accessed contacts. Let's say the necessitates focus on human resource management and organizational framework management, and also made us more aware about the unique capacity of the staff in the organization, which leads us to develop what we call from now the group of experts. BDMS used the widespread capacity of the local experts of the NOCR, who are also one of the most important groups of users, to address new users and specify their needs and reflect their ideas. This new working arrangement extended coordination and accelerated the process of modernization. Their unique set of abilities encouraged the BDMS to let them take part in online conversations about other phases such as design, collect, disseminate, and evaluate. They are also able to create a new network of interviewers for data collection. Relied on these capacities and some fresh specialties added to the BDMS itself, VIA system planned for new build and collection capacities such as survey at registration, survey at registration time, SRT, which I will briefly introduce later. BDMS also designed for new media such as infographics, motion graphics, descriptive reports about the statistics for public users, and this allowed us to use the various dissemination approaches to access the most possible range of users via web-based solutions, SMS, and also a mobile application we developed to make the statistics available for more trained users too. In recent couple of years, BDMS also enjoyed a new evaluation method for evaluation of annual statistical production based on the viewpoints of the group of experts. And let's I go to another unique achievement of the modernization process. The SRT, survey at registration time, is a method that samples the incoming transactions to an administrative register, considers the people involved in the transaction as respondents, and collect additional data about them. Since the register continues working, the survey can be continued periodically, be developed gradually, and be conducted in any desired direction to achieve more details about the population. And this can highly develop to allow BDMS to gather more characteristics about the population, and based on the priorities and constraints in the CRBS and ID management system in NOCR, this method can easily help the system to gather more UN recommended characteristics for vital events. This also would help the developing PR system, population registration system, to know its priorities. Here's a general projection of the current workflow and process followed by the BDMS for modernizing production and dissemination of the vital statistics system to the general statistical business process model. Okay, and let's say the last one. Nowadays, there are still major processes in progress, which after their completion, one might actually say that a modernizing process model is developing system. First, the evaluation of the whole process outputs and the level of users and stakeholder satisfaction. And another is the completion of an actual population registration into fields, a technical field which by improving the SRT and finalizing the genealogy database, we are going to...
I'm sorry, there's 1 minute left. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And at a higher administrative level, by playing active roles in population strategic councils, NOCR local officers are the secretary of these councils. The group of experts and BDMS are now playing unique roles to contact and cooperate with all stakeholders in order to rail the way for complete population registration system based on national population database. Thank you so much. Kindly for more find more about us and contact us via provided links. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Said Muhammad, for really impressive presentation. Now I'll give the floor to the representative of Nepal, Mr. Rishiram Sigdal. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. I am Rishiram Sigdal from Nepal. I'm working at Central Bureau of Statistics. I'm pleased to welcome you all in my presentation. In my presentation, I will briefly discuss on these outlines. The objective of this paper is to explore the existing data sources and new data sources required to compile the Nepal tourism satellite account. Nepal is a key destination of national and international tourists. Tourism industry.
Mr. Rishi, I don't think that. Have you shared your presentation?
I have shared. Can you see my presentation now? Can you see?
No, not yet.
No.
I'm so sorry. I have shared.
We can't see it. I think rather than trying to figure out what's going on.
It's okay. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes, now we can see it.
Oh, yes. Okay, sorry for disturbances. So I'm presenting a little bit introduction to my paper. In fact, the exact contribution of tourism industry in Nepal's economy is yet to be estimated. Therefore, compilation of NTS is important to provide with tourism-related information. While developing this paper, I follow qualitative research design. In addition, I communicate and discuss with concerned stakeholders to gather the information. Okay, inbound tourism. First of all, let me present the existing scenario of data sources that are applicable to NTSA. Regarding inbound tourism, there is no complete and robust information. However, Ministry of Culture, Tourism and Civil Aviation publishes tourism statistics annually that includes broad dimensions of statistics such as tourists' arrival, length of stay, royalties received, and so on. The ministry mostly depends on administrative records of Department of Immigration. The department records information using passport for air passengers, whereas land code registers for non-Indian overland visitors only. It is clear that information collected using passport cannot qualify in one hand. On the other, overland Indian visitors are missing from the record. Regarding tourism expenditure, Central Bank provides the data on foreign earnings, but the data lacks to meet the requirement of NTSA in one hand. On the other, it fails to capture the data of money exchange transactions through informal channels. In case of domestic tourism, there is no data at all to the present. For outbound tourism, Department of Immigration and Central Bank provide some information, but both the sources lack to meet the requirement of NTSA. Similarly, BOP, balance of payment, also does not exactly refer to tourism expenditure. For production account, NTSA can use the National Account Statistics and Supply and Use tables published by CBS with meaningful manipulation. There are various sources of employment data on tourism industry. One of them is a survey conducted by Ministry of Tourism in 2014 that collected a wide range of data on employment, for example, accommodation, transportation, and so on. Unfortunately, the survey failed to capture the information on number of hours worked by status in one hand. On the other, the survey did not cover all types of tourism industries. Similarly, the survey also has limitation in sampling process as the selected areas are biased. The best possible existing data source on tourism employment in Nepal is Nepal Labor Force Survey 2017-18, but further data analysis is needed to fulfill the requirement of NTSA table. There are other sources that provide employment statistics and tourism like Nepal Living Standard Survey, Annual Household Survey, and so on. Non-monetary indicators can be derived from Economic Census 2018 that provide the number of establishments and average number of jobs. On the other, Ministry of Tourism can provide the information on accommodation and passengers. In addition, Nepal Land Transport Survey 2013 provide the information land transport. Now, let me briefly discuss on alternative data sources based on previous literatures. Various studies show that mobile positioning data can be a good supplement for official tourism statistics at the moment. Some authors also suggest to use mobile positioning data combining with conventional surveys. Similarly, based on the previous studies, we can say at the moment, big data cannot fulfill the requirement of NTSA because most big data is used either to predict tourism indicators or tourist perceptions, concerns, and sentiment towards the destinations. In addition, Upadhyay states that big data are more useful in estimating growth rather than creating the benchmark statistics. And he also argues that the internet users of Nepal are less than 20%, showing that there is limited scope and coverage of big data at the moment. Based on the discussion above, the NTSA required two new surveys, Domestic Tourism Survey and Inbound Tourism Expenditure Survey. Moreover, more disaggregated suits are required along with other existing sources. Regarding inbound tourism expenditure survey, as stated by Indrani et al., the digital surveys are more efficient. Therefore, it would be better to coordinate with the internet service provider and conduct digital survey at International Airport of Nepal. There is a problem of unavailability of proper sampling frame for both inbound tourism expenditure survey for inbound tourism expenditure survey. At the moment, Nepal may use the frame from administrative records of Department of Immigration with care, but in future it should be improved. Tablet-assisted personal interview, TAPI, technique with structured questionnaire would be the best option for better efficiency. Nepal has many opportunities to compile TSA. For example, Nepal can review the experience of various countries that have already compiled TSA. Among them, the TSA of India can be the better reference to the NTSA. mirror data, especially from India, can be used with technical cooperation with India. The existing high-level TSA technical committee can establish strong coordination mechanism among stakeholders is an important opportunity. On the other, Ministry of Tourism is in the process of reviewing tourism information management system using modern technology. For example, regular reporting from star hotels is also an opportunity. There are sufficient existing policies and plans that spell out the requirement and provides the direction to compile NTS is an important opportunity. The NSDS visualizes a strong statistical system in the country. On the other, a new statistical bill is tabled in Parliament and hopefully it becomes a law very soon that mandates all stakeholders for developing strong statistical system in the country. Unfortunately, there are some challenges as well. For instance, capturing the information from the overland Indian tourists who cross the border by informal entry points is difficult. Weak statistical competency is another serious problem to compile NTSA. Technically, unavailability of proper sampling frame, especially for inbound tourism, is another challenge. Another major challenge is to capture the account of the electronic transaction of foreign resident tourists directly to the foreign resident industry. Okay, let me conclude my paper in few points. Basically, this paper identifies 7 major data sources for NTSA: DTS, ITS, NLFS, NAS, Economic Census, Statistical Report of Ministry of Culture, Tourism and Civil Aviation, and search. However, some sort of modification or innovation of data sources are essential. For example, incorporate domestic tourism survey module in NLSS. Use digital survey technique for ITES. Further disaggregation of sorts in the days to come. Moreover, big data are not appropriate for NTSA, at least for the first experimental TSA, but continue efforts on studying the usability of big data in tourism sector are worthy to the system. Nepal need to introduce arrival and departure card for overland Indian visitors. It is necessary to keep record in each entry points. CVS need to publish more disaggregated sorts in order to meet the requirements of NTSA. In summary, out of 10 tables, table 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 10 are recommended to compile for the first experimental NTSA, whereas table 8 and 9 can be developed in the next round. Among these tables, table 5, 6, 7, and some indicators of table 10 can be compiled using the existing data sources, whereas for table 1, 2, 3, 4 require new surveys. Okay, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind patience. I always appreciate your valued comments, queries, and feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rishiram, for very interesting and informative presentation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for questions and answers. We have 15 minutes. And after that we will have 5-minute break. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. We can start with questions.
I think there was a question that came from one of the participants in the chat.
Yes.
So my screen's got. Goy, can you see the question?
Question from Mr. Kimon Irwin. He asked to Mr. Ibrev, how do your institution pursue and cultivate a quality conscious culture?
Thank you for the question. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for the question. So it's been a very interesting experience to make some diagnosis of the existing system and making an overview. So now everyone is aware of quality issues, and now the top management and the other staff members are now promoting the idea of reusing the existing systems, data collection tools, data sets, and the key issue is to avoid duplication, both in terms of data, both in terms of the existing applications and software that are being used in the institution. So efficiency and effectiveness is becoming a key word in the institution nowadays, and there is also a lot about using the administrative sources, using the new emerging data sources. So these kind of issues are being really promoted in the institution. And after the project was finished, I mean, the top management of the institution has also decided to set up a specific department on quality assurance matters. So now we have a new department on quality assurance, and this department is tasked to do a complete evaluation of the entire production system and come up with some ideas and proposals on how we further can reform the institution in order to become more effective and efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can see that we've had one more question in the chat, and this is to Kyrgyzstan and Iran. And the question is, how did you manage to connect strategic level processes and the introduction and implementation of the GSBPM? So maybe we'll give Mr. Ibraev a break and go and allow Mr. Syed to answer this one first, and then Mr. Ibraev, you can follow up. Shall I repeat the question? How did you manage to connect strategic level processes and the introduction and implementation of the GSBPM? And that's to Mr. Syed and Mr. Ibraev. Mr. Ibraev, would you like to come in on this?
And I have also some couple of questions to presenters.
If you could write your questions in the chat, it makes it easier to keep the order of the session. Right now, we're addressing one question from one of the participants. Mr. Ibraev, would you like to address the question?
Yes. So the goal was to make an overview of the processes at the strategic level and try to match and compare the strategic processes with the existing international models, and in particular with GSBPM. And the goal was to make an assessment whether the overall processes are in line with the GSBPM. Of course, the production processes in each country has some specifics, but overall, and the production process doesn't have to be 100% similar to the processes that are in the GSBPM model. Each country has its own specific, but overall, it is an international model, which is a framework for most of the statistical offices and agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Syed, was there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes, thank you. One thing I should add is that we are just, let's say, do as much as we can do. For example, when we find out that there is a need for description of the vital statistics concepts, and there are misunderstandings in the media, for example, we tried to implement and produce some descriptive resources and productions, and on the other hand, we follow the strategic level processes. We do not wait for each other. We do the strategic planning and the strategic activities at their follow, and at the same time we try to, for example, specify needs and what see what we can do for the needs of the users, and do as much as we can. That's what I can add. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Gagita, as chair, I think you've got the right to take the floor to ask your question yourself.
Yeah, so I have a question to Kyrgyzstan. What kind of challenges do you face while using administrative data sources for statistical purposes?
Mr. Todrade, thank you for the question. Unfortunately, the administrative sources are not being widely used in Kyrgyzstan. We are just in the process of starting to consider how we can use the administrative sources. So we have, for example, received first set of data sets from the tax agency. And the problem is that we don't have a common metadata system that would allow us to use the data from other ministries and agencies. So there are many challenges. For example, the differences in the concepts and classifications used in line ministries and agencies. Sometimes there are also issues of technical issues. Some of the data are not available in electronic format, and if they are available in electronic format, it's sometimes really difficult to use it within the institution because the format doesn't meet the requirements that are available in-house. But the key challenge here, I guess, is the lack of the common metadata system with the holders of administrative data.
Thank you very much.
Oh, since there's no other questions in the chat, would you like to carry on with your next question for Iran?
Yes, I see it. Do you have a special law or legislation which defines concrete rules and obligations of relevant institutions involved in the system? Did you mean about, for example, exchanging data or something like this, or managing work together? Okay, for data exchange, there are some per case, let's say, agreements, but not a concrete law, as I know. But for being relevant and regulated with the NSS, we have very close sessions and let's say manage each other with the regulations, with the sessions they held, and other kinds of works. But as I know that the new law is in process, and maybe there should be more concrete laws for all involved institutions in the NSS, but specifically for our organization as the PIN provider, there are some more agreements with the NSS about the workarounds and workflows, but I don't know about, I don't aware about any concrete rule about this.
Thank you very much, and I have one more question.
Okay.
So the question is from Mr. Gagita from Nepal, from Mr. Rishi. Did you check the possibility to use big data sources, for example, mobile phone data from mobile phone operators for the production of tourism statistics? Unfortunately, I think this will need to be the last question. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you, Gogita, for the question. Yeah, of course, there is the possibility of using big data for tourism statistics, but in fact, we cannot use big data for the time for tourism satellite account. But there is a challenge to cooperate with the, mobile service providers because of some sort of security systems. Even though we are hopeful to establish a strong coordination mechanism so that we can use the mobile positioning data for tourism statistics. For the time, not for tourism satellite account, but for tourism statistics, yes, we can use. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think that we need to move on to the second set of presentations. Since time is very short, we can take a quick 1 minute break to allow people to stretch their legs and get some water if needed, and we'll prepare for the next set of presentations. So we'll come back in 1 minute. So please stay connected. Don't disconnect and reconnect. Stay connected, and we will be back in 1 minute. So Ms. Fitri, would you like to put your presentation up, as you'll be beginning the next set? Okay, Mr. Gogita, shall we start the next half?
Yes, we can start.
Over to you.
Yes, so now I'll give the floor to Mrs. Fitri Andri Astuti from Statistics Indonesia. Ms. Fitri, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you.
You have 8 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Fitri Andriasuti. In collaboration with my partner Nurul Indonesia, we would like to present our research about how the social media data can be used to measuring mental health statistics. In mental health statistics in Indonesia already count by Ministry of Health and Statistics Indonesia. It's called in a household survey called Susenas to get some indicator to disaggregate the total cases of the mental health. in other sources for the international agency like MIMI also there are self-reported questionnaires that share in their website. But the problem is using survey is not up to date. Like Susanna's only 2 times in 1 year and absolutely costly. Meanwhile, the advances in information technology and data storage that made social media data is an incredibly rich data sources in both volume and variety. We use the Twitter platform because the Twitter platform has excellent platform for social science results because the public tweet is an searchable archive. This is our flowchart in constructing our method to measuring mental health statistics. The first step is we identify the keyword related to the mental health, and then from the keyword we querying into the Twitter's API from the 3 model we built. We built with the Python programming language, and then the result of the keyword can be seen in this slide. This is the top 5 keywords related to mental health indicator. And then the next step is data pre-processing. We did the URL removing, stopword removing, stemming data, and the formalizing text in Indonesian language. So we in our algorithm only process the formal text in Indonesia, not the slang word. And then the next step is data classification. We built 3 classifier. The first classifier is to classify the tweet contains commercial news or not. We got the accuracy about 0.93. And the second classifier, we classifying related or not related mental health to mental health topic. We classifying manually and we got the accuracy 0.68. We use a naive bias classifier. And then the last classifier, we classifying the mental health category, and we got the accuracy 0.91. And then the final step is dissemination the data. This is our result in module 1. The module 1, as we can see in the slide, the beginning of the period, the trend of mental health disorder increased steadily from the beginning period. But there has been significant increases in the end of period. Although the 7 weeks before the last period is decreased steadily. And then the next module, this is our results about the query depression and sadness. The sadness keyword fall in the 3 days in the beginning of period, and then increase steadily until the 27 April 2020, and then drop and rise to the end of period. Meanwhile, the depression is founded rise steadily. And then the module 3, we also collect the tweet that have contained the keyword COVID or COVID-19. In 1 week, 7 days, we have much of the tweet contain the commercial news on our tweet. But a few of them contains mental health indicator. I mean, we think that the content of the commercial news or tweet is also it can be suggestion to how to make healthy lifestyle to prevent the coronavirus disease, and less of them can affect the mental health indicator. And then the last, we also found the 3 finding The first, we developed a tool and method to identify potentially relevant content in mental health indicator. The second, to increase the accuracy of the data training that code by human manually, we need automate method that will replicate human code examples. And the last, the result of the Twitter analysis shows the nature of the human conversation about mental health disorder. And then we also have a recommendation for the future research. The first, we need to explore other social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube more deeply in order to measuring indicator of mental health statistics. The second, examining the characteristic and sentiment of the classified text data. And the last one is developing a robust search strategy in social media to get relevant data about mental health. Please note that our research is not being implemented in official statistics, but it can be used to complementary the official statistics. Thank you.
Mrs. Fitri, thank you very much for your presentation and for sharing experience of Indonesia. Now I'll give the floor to Mrs. Octavia. Mrs. Octavia, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gogita. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Octavia, and I am from National Statistics Office of Indonesia. Let me share the PowerPoint first. Okay. Today, I would like to present our paper titled A Pilot Project of Area Sampling Frame for Means Statistics Indonesia's Experience. This is the background why our institution tried to implement the area sampling frame to improve the methodology of means statistics. In the past few years, the issue of crop statistic accuracy has been increasing in Indonesia. While the youth estimation has used a sound statistical-based methodology, the harvested area as one element to calculate the production is still collected by using the conventional method, mainly the eye estimate, which is very subjective. This harvested area data creates a prolonged public debate around its accuracy, and therefore in 2018, National Statistics Office of Indonesia, in collaboration with the Agency for Assessment and Application of Technology, implemented the area sampling frame methodology to estimate the paddy harvested area. However, after the success story of the implementation of area sampling frame for paddy, it still leaves questions for other strategic commodity, particularly for maize statistics. It is indicated that the harvested area data of maize also suffers of overestimation, just like the paddy does, so objective measurement is very essential. To address this issue, in 2019, National Statistics Office of Indonesia tried to replicate the area sampling frame for maize statistics with some technical adjustments. The goals are to estimate the maize harvested area to be more accurate and timely, as well as to provide the spatial information data of maize cultivation. And this is the stages of area sampling frame construction for maize statistics. We try to simplify it into 4 stages. The first stage is preparing the supporting data, such as the topographic, administrative, and land cover map. And besides, because we do not have sufficient information about the land area specifically dedicated for maize cultivation, we use several sources of spatial information of potential maize location, such as the result of area sampling frame for paddy, which has the information about maize cultivation, also the result of field identification, as well as the additional information from the Ministry of Agriculture. After preparing the supporting data, the next stage is creating the statistical unit, which is usually called as a segment and has a size of 100 and 100 meters. The next stage is overlaying the spatial information of maize potential location into the segment grid, and the last is determining the label to avoid the overlapping of information in one segment. After these 4 stages, we do the sample segment selection by simple random sampling with a distance threshold. This is the illustration of the field observation. The field observation is conducted during the last 7 days every month. And what makes it really different with the previous business process is in this new methodology, we try to utilize the Android-based application. The surveyor doing the observation using their smartphone equipped by the Android-based application, and they have to do the direct observation at the observation point. This is the illustration of the application display. The blue dots show the position of the enumerator, while the red dots show the observation point, and the green rectangle represent the boundary of the segment, which is divided into 4 subsegments. When doing the observation, the enumerator has to observe the condition of the maize growth phase and input it to the application, whether it is in the vegetative, generative, or harvest condition. Also, they have to take the picture of it, and after finish all of the 4 subsegments, they have to send it to the server through the application. This is our current progress that so far, the realization of the sample is actually delightful. Since June 2019, about 99% of total samples have been observed every month. And besides, as I mentioned before, the implementation of area sampling frame makes possible the availability of spatial distribution of maize cultivation. For instance, this figure shows the spatial information produced based on the observation results in West Nusa Tenggara province. It can be seen that the most of eastern region was cultivating maize in the observation month period, represented by the green color. Of course, this could help the policymakers to formulate the more effective policy on maize commodities, especially when it comes to a spatial context. And what we would really like to point out in this paper is there are 2 key points that we would like to point out. The first one is to make sure that this project could be successful. It needs a well-built collaboration between National Statistics Office and other government institutions, especially those with the expertise in the field of geospatial. And we also would like to point out that this implementation of area sampling frame has changed the whole business process of data collection to be more effective and faster due to the use of technology. While the previous methods requires the document delivery in stages due to the use of paper-based questionnaire, with this modernization, it is really helpful in simplifying the collection and processing stages. And however, we realized that there are several challenges in the development of area sampling frame for maize. The most significant challenge is the unavailability of spatial information on maize cultivation land area due to the characteristic of maize cultivation in Indonesia. But for the time being, BPS is still conducting studies related to the computation of potential maize area. The other challenge is the possibility of misidentification of maize growth phase by the surveyor when doing the observation. And to address this issue, National Statistics Office of Indonesia is continuing to improve the business process of monitoring, such as by upgrading web-based monitoring as well as creating the Android-based monitoring system. And lastly, there are the geographical difficulties in some parts of region in Indonesia, so that the surveyor needs more effort to reach the sample segment. And besides, due to Indonesia is a vast archipelago country, we deploy a massive number of surveyors for field observation. I think that is all my presentation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Octavia, for a very interesting and impressive presentation. Now, I would like to invite our last speaker of the session, Mrs. Olivia from Hong Kong.
Thank you. I'm sharing my screen now. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Olivia, and I'm from the Census and Statistics Department of Hong Kong. It is my pleasure to participate in the 2020 Asia Pacific Statistics Week. I'm going to share with you The sixth reason why modernization is a must in statistical offices, using our experience of implementing online questionnaire in one of the oldest statistical survey that we are running, the General Household Survey. The General Household Survey is basically our labor force survey. It started in August 1981 and has been conducted continuously on a monthly basis. It collects data on a range of topics such as employment, unemployment, underemployment, and income, etc. Typically, it takes about 45 to 60 minutes to finish for a household. On dissemination, we compile and publish moving quarter statistics monthly. Actually, today is our press release date for the labor force statistics of March to May 2020. So you can see that we actually have a very tight schedule of about only 2 weeks for data processing and compilation. We adopt a rotational replicate sample design with 18 replicate samples for each month. Each replicate is a representative sample of quarters in Hong Kong. So in each month, half of them will be repeated cases that had been sampled 3 months ago, and the rest of them are new cases. Every month, there are about 9,000 quarters in our sample. All along, the data collection relies on 2 main channels. The first one is face-to-face interview using paper questionnaires. And the second one is computer-assisted telephone interviews. This is mainly for cases that we had obtained telephone numbers from previous round. Every month, there are about 30% of cases that are assigned to the telephone data collection mode. So it's been running well, the survey has been running well, but in recent years, we noticed that many households are becoming harder to reach by field visits. For example, there are many people who work till very late and they return home late. Some may value their privacy and they don't want to be disturbed at home. Some refuse to talk or give out personal information directly to strangers. And there are some people who prefer virtual interaction more so than face-to-face interaction. On top of these changes in households' preferences, it is also becoming more expensive to conduct face-to-face interviews. Not only is it more difficult to identify and train up field officers who are comfortable with outdoor field work and talking to strangers, also there are many building management officers in Hong Kong who have enforced tighter security control, and it makes it hard for our field officers to reach the households. On the other hand, the advancement in technology and receptiveness of the public on online surveys is also a big driver for us to consider implementing the online questionnaire. In fact, in our 2011 census and 2016 by census, online questionnaire has been used and the take-up rate has increased over the years. Considering the above, we decided to roll out the implementation of online questionnaire, we call it OQ, in the General Household Survey in 2017. So in designing the implementation approach, we consider a number of factors. So we are a monthly survey and the data compiled from the survey are important indicators that we need to publish every month as scheduled. So the top priority is to make sure that data collection and dissemination will not be interrupted with this implementation. On the other hand, we also noted that designing and building up new systems and processes are very complex, both operationally and technically, and it takes a long time to complete in one go. The same goes for the staff training. Also, we want to make sure that the respondents are truly receptive to this mode of data collection and that data quality will not be undermined. So with the above considerations in mind, we think that a full-blown implementation would be dangerous because any unexpected problems with the new system or operations would disrupt our services and affect the timely dissemination of survey results. Instead, we adopted a 2-stage trial implementation approach lasting for 18 months in total. So in the first stage of trial, which lasted for 10 months, we started off with inviting only less than 1% of sample cases to use the OQ, and we gradually increased the number month by month. The selection of cases was mostly based on field officers assigned to the cases, because this will allow us to train up only some field officers in the beginning and phase out the training for the others throughout the long implementation period. In the first stage, we also tested out the system, processes, and the questionnaire design and fixed and refined any problems as they were found. In the second stage of trial implementation, which took 8 months, we expanded the coverage to replicate level of samples. So we started off with inviting 1 out of the 18 replicates to use the OQ and gradually increase the number of replicates. This approach allowed us to expand the adoption in a controlled manner, because in case anything went wrong, the remaining replicates can still be used to compile representative survey results. Also, comparison can be made between the OQ and non-OQ replicates so that we can study the impacts of introducing this new mode on key survey results. The take-up rate of OQ was satisfactory from the beginning of trial implementation. In the first and second stage of trial, the average take-up rate was 21%. And after the full implementation, the take-up rate was further boosted up to reach 26% on average in 2019. It was totally out of our expectation because our survey is a voluntary survey. Also, we found that the average response rate of OQ invited cases was consistently higher than that of non-OQ cases by about 2 to 3 percentage points. Apparently, OQ can facilitate data reporting of some households who could not or did not respond to our survey under the usual interviewing modes. This helped us to improve the overall response rate and also the data quality.
I'm sorry, 1 more minute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll be quick. In the second stage of implementation, we also studied the impacts to survey results by the introduction of this mode. And we did not see any significant differences in the demographic distributions of persons enumerated. And also there were no notable differences in the key statistics compiled with OQ and non-OQ replicates. So to sum up, with the successful implementation of online questionnaire, data collection processes in the general household survey are modernized. And with this new data collection mode, which is convenient for respondents and which minimizes disturbances to them, we could provide better services for our respondents. And as the first regular survey to implement OQ, the platform developed is now used in other statistical surveys, so that this modernization is actually extended to the whole organization. With the recent COVID-19 outbreak, it proved to be very powerful for situations where face-to-face enumeration had to be suspended. During this time, we have added new measures to encourage the use of OQ, including reminder letters, SMS, appeal letters to the sample households, and we managed to boost up the take-up rate further by another 10 percentage points. So this experience fully illustrates that modernization is indeed necessary for statistical officers to maintain our service, particularly in this difficult, uncertain time. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Olivia, for very interesting presentation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for questions and answers. We have a couple of questions.
Yeah, I think we've got one here in the chat from for Ms. Fitri, asking how were you able to identify if the social media account you've selected belongs to your sampling frame? Have you considered there may be fake dummy social media accounts? That's to Ms. Fitri.
Okay, thank you, Petra. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. However, we in our results, so we crawl all the tweet data from the Twitter search platform without differentiating the fake account. But in the domain of the tech analysis from social media like Twitter, like in our research, there are bot analyses. The bot analysis is to detect account is real or only a robot. In our research, in classifier of how in classifier tweet content commercial or news, we also use the filter to detect the tweet replicate from many account like bot account. So if the algorithm say the tweet replicate by many account, it automate detect it in our system. It automatically detect the bot account, and it will remove from our database. That's all. I hope it answer the question.
Thank you. And Mr. Gugita, I see you've got a question to Octavia, to Miss Octavia. And you're asking if she could share with us the experience of the use of GIS technologies for statistical purposes. What are the main challenges? What actions are needed for further development? So that's from Mr. Gugita to Ms. Octavia.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gogita, for the question. It is actually our first experience try to combine the geographic information system and for the statistical survey. And it actually takes a long process. We start the development since 2015 for the PADI statistics. And back then it was still just cover a small area. And then in 2018, we implement it for all of the region of Indonesia. And after that, we try to also replicate it for the maize statistics in 2019. And what are the main challenges is actually because we do not have the map base for the construction of area sampling frames. So we should make a collaboration with other institutions, and also we do not have sufficient human resources with the expertise in geospatial. So we make a collaboration with the Agency for Assessment and Application of Technology in Indonesia. And I think to make it more promising, of course, we have to build a strong collaboration with other institutions. Also, we have to continue to improve the methodology, also the monitoring system. I think that is all my answer. I hope it could answer your question. Thank you very much.
And an additional question also from Mr. Gogita to Ms. Olivia. And the question is, in order to avoid risks related to the spread of COVID-19, did your office move to the alternative data collection methods, which includes the replacements of personal interview methods by CATI and online survey within the framework of the household survey? Could you share your experience in this regard? So that's to Ms. Olivia.
Yes, sure. As mentioned in my presentation, during the outbreak, the worst months, which is February to April, all the face-to-face interviews were suspended in Hong Kong, and so we could only rely on the telephone interview, CATI, which I mentioned is about 30% of our samples in a month. And the remaining, we could only send letters to the sampled households and encourage them to use the online questionnaire. So with these new measures that we added, so sending more letters, sending more SMS to ask them to participate, it actually turned out to be very fruitful, because we were able to boost up the OQ take-up rate to a further 10 percentage point. So we have about 1,000 more cases coming back through the online questionnaire mode. So this slightly offset the loss of face-to-face interviews, but still our response rate was lower than usual by a little bit. But with OQ, we were able to still have reliable data to publish, and our dissemination was not interrupted.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And there's an additional question from Sabrina, and the question is for Ms. Fitri. Do you face any challenges in data processing?
Okay, thank you. I will try to answer the question. Do you face any challenges in data processing? Absolutely, yes. In the domain of the text analysis from the big data, all the data is unstructured. But we try to make the best algorithm to produce classifier with higher accuracy. Then the challenges is there are a lot of slang words in the big data. So we try to optimizing our algorithm using the library Indonesian language called Pujangga REST API to that write in Scala programming language. So I think the challenges is the data is unstructured and the content of the data is many contain the slang word. I think I hope it answer your question. Thank you.
So if anyone's got any further questions, please do write them into the chat box. But I hope it's okay for me to take the liberty of asking a question to the presenters, and whoever would like to answer could answer this. We've seen these 6 great presentations on different types of modernization, and modernization always implies change, and change towards something that might not be familiar to others. Have you had any pushback or any issues with kind of the cultural change in your organization as a result of these different, either the systemic or the tools approach, these different approaches that you had to face up to, and how did you address them? So I don't know if anyone would like to answer that, any of the 6 presenters.
May I answer a question?
The question is, what are the challenges when you came up with your modernization, your changes? Did you have any pushback within your organization to the modernization, and how did you address those kind of cultural changes?
Yeah, one of the things that now we have been promoting in the institution is to question the ways that you have been producing statistics, and the approach is to stop and look around and get knowledge and experience from others, from other countries, from other national institutions, and on how they collect statistics, on how they compile statistics, on how they use administrative data. So now we are pushing this idea of making some changes into the way that we have been producing statistics for many years, and reconsider the way that we have been producing statistics for many years. So this is the main idea and main message that we are trying to spread among the staff members.
Thank you. Mr. Kagita, shall we close the Q&A and move to the... You're on mute, sorry. You're muted.
Yes, true. Before
Okay.
making...
So,
yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my summaries. Sorry, I'm just finding that one. Okay, I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So just to bring together, I very quickly set the 6 very disparate papers that we had on this common theme of modernization. I just want to bring some of these key points together. Very broadly, I think that we had one group of papers that were looking at a more systemic approach to modernization, and that the key messages I think which came up from those papers were around, very important. We need to know your new users' needs. Identifying the frameworks which need strengthening, whether that's normative, cultural, or legal. The issue of metadata, I think, came through very strongly in the different papers, and the importance of exploring all data sources, which implies that we have to have good metadata to be able to bring these and integrate these different data sources. And also the need for common standards of quality assurance across the whole systems. So that was in that group of papers, which were the first set of papers which were more systemic. The next group of papers were around, I think, more tools for modernization. And these are also very important. So you can have your systemic changes, but you also need to have tools to be able to modernize. And I felt that these papers were looking at these different opportunities for modernization, and what's available. So now the social media, we're able to use that as a new data source. We're able much better now to integrate with different tools, geospatial data, and also using, such as with the survey in Hong Kong, using new methods for traditional sources of data, such as household surveys. But these tools also are raising new challenges, which our authors explored in their papers. One of them is the challenge of cooperation and collaboration among new producers. So these are not the traditional producers of data, and we need to learn how to cooperate and collaborate with them in the way that we would do with our traditional partners. Issues around data ownership, that's especially when it comes to something like social media. And then this comes up again and again, issues around data privacy and security, especially when you start integrating different data sources. So I felt that these were the common threads of the 6 papers, which came from very different areas, but it was great to be able to bring them together and see how different sectors in different countries were facing, I think, some very common challenges within modernization. Okay, and I will hand over now to our colleague Goy, who'll just do some quick housekeeping, and then we'll hand over to Mr. Gagita for close. So Goy, would you like to take the floor?
Yes, thank you, Petra. May I request all participants in this SD2 session to complete an online meeting evaluation. The link will be sent to you through the chat box. Kindly complete it by Friday, 19 June. Your feedback is very important for us for improvement of the event for the future. And I have sent you the link for the paper of this session. It has been made available, and the presentation made today by all the presenter will be uploaded later today. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, over to you, Mr. Gagita.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to express my appreciation to all speakers for providing very interesting presentations. My sincere appreciation to you, to organizers of this session, and to ESCAP. In conclusion, I would like to underline that it is up to us how we address current challenges, deal with needs and opportunities. It depends absolutely on us how we do it, individually or as a part of international community. We should not evoke only the past, but also commit all our efforts to the practical ways for development of our joint activities. Today's gathering is expression of our will to cooperate and to take care of our shared methods in the most reasonable, appropriate, and sustainable way. I hope that today's meeting will be productive and gives particular directions for our future work. Thank you very much once again. Wish you all the best. And please stay healthy and safe. So
Thank you very much.
the session is closed. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.